All right, I'm going to do this really fast because I have to get back to work. So, what I'm going to talk about really quickly is basically the melee hunter in World of Warcraft Classic and World of Warcraft Classic Season of Discovery. The reason I say that is because I've played melee hunter in World of Warcraft Classic Hardcore, in regular Classic, in Turtle WoW, in regular WoW. And I can tell you I have a very good understanding of the mechanics of the meat hunter, and I can kind of tell you what's going to work well for you in Classic as well as in Season of Discovery. I've watched some other videos where people talked about it. I watched a video just came out recently about a guy talking about Melee Hunter in Season of Discovery, and I can tell you that what he said was pretty much accurate. It was basically him just reading the tooltips, and it was basically obvious. I mean, because if you talk about the runes for Melee Hunter in Season of Discovery in the first phase, you don't really have a whole lot of options. You're pretty much going to go Aspect of the Line because it just makes sense. Lone Wolf 50% increased damage is not going to do enough damage for you because your pet actually does quite a bit of damage. Losing your pet's damage is never going to, 15% is not going to compensate. Typically in Classic WoW Hardcore, my pet does probably, and I am running, this is a full 60 build though here, but let's take a look at a rotation and just see how much damage my pet actually does. If we look at the damage meter right here, actually what we're going to do is we're going to split it out and we're going to get rid of pet. You can see here my pet's doing 41% of my damage. Let's go ahead and reset this and I'll show you a basic rotation in what Classic Hardcore would look like. Let's just really quickly do this. And so basically, you know, you're going to be using your traps, you're going to be using Raptor Strike, and you're going to be using your Mongoose Bite. Now there's a couple different ways to do this. In Season of Discovery we don't have this option because in Season of Discovery we don't have the ability really to tank mobs too much because we're doing dungeons and the tank's going to be holding threats. So Mongoose Bite isn't something you're going to be using a lot during like dungeons, but it is something you're going to be using a lot when you're leveling if you want to use it. And the way that you can do that is you need to set up some macros for your pet. And the macros are right here. And you're going to just have one here that's going to turn your pet's growl on. It's going to turn your pet's cower off. And when you do that, you want your pet to tank. And when you don't want your pet to tank and you want to tank the mob, you're going to create a macro that turns your pet's growl off. Pet auto cast off growl, pet auto cast on cower. Now turning growl off, turning cower on. Now your pet's going to drop threat very quickly and you are going to be actually tanking up the mob. Right now you can see I have it off, I have growl off, and the reason I know that is because I have a weak aura that shows up right above my health orb here. If I turn it on, you can see that it shows the little kind of growl thing. This tells me that my pet's growl is on. I'm going to turn it off for this fight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a very simple rotation that you will be using in Season of Discovery. It'll be slightly different, but it's going to be in phase, probably in phase 2. You could start off combat by dropping your immolation trap. You could send your pet in. As soon as your pet gets threat, you're going to bring your pet back. You're going to queue up Raptor Strike. That was just a trinket that procced. And you're going to go ahead and fight. Make sure you have Monkey on, which I didn't. And you can go ahead and do, I usually do a wing clip, and then we're going to go ahead and go right back into Raptor Strike. We're going to look to proc Mongoose Bite, which we procced. We used Mongoose Bite. And now you're just going to melee this guy down pretty simply, right? And if you look at that combat in that particular fight, my pet did do 26% damage. Now that's going to vary based on a couple of things. Now you have to keep in mind in Season of Discovery in Phase 1, you're not going to be able to drop traps as much as you want simply because you do not have feign deaths. You can't feign death and drop a trap. So in this specific example, later in Phase 2 in Season of Discovery, when you have feign death, you'll be able to send your pet in. You can run in, you can queue up Raptor Strike. We can go ahead, feign death, drop immolation trap, immediately start attacking the mob once again. I'm going to get threat pretty much right away as soon as I hit him. I'm going to proc Mongoose Bite. I'm going to proc my Crusader buff. And again, we procced Mongoose Bite again, but the mob died pretty much right away. But as you can see, even in these two fights where I'm tanking the mob, using Mongoose Bite, using Raptor Strike, and using Immolation Trap to deal damage, my pet still did 30% overall damage. So, when you're talking about runes for Season of Discovery, you know, doing something like Lone Wolf doesn't really make a lot of sense because, yeah, you're doing 50% more damage, but you're losing the 30% damage from your pet, so that's bogus. So Aspect of the Line is your only choice. In your hands rune, pretty much the only choices are going to be Beast Mastery or Carve. If you want to be a true melee hunter, you're going to want to go with Carve because you want to use melee weapons. I mean, who the hell wants to... You know, that's the point of being a melee hunter. You're hitting people. So you're going to go Carve. And again, this is really only 50% weapon damage, so it's not going to be that good unless you're hitting maybe 2 or more mobs. You can go Beast Mastery, but again, if you want to be a true melee hunter, I would recommend just grabbing Carve for the RP aspect of it and just for kind of the idea of what a melee hunter should be. And then on your legs, you really only have one option, and that's going to be Flanking Strike. For your talent build, for Season 1, excuse me, I'm burping. For Season 1 of Discovery, it's pretty basic. Like, if you want to push pure DPS, you're probably going to max these guys out. You could, I mean, I love to do deflection when I'm leveling, But Season of Discovery, you know, your leveling's pretty easy, and you're going to be doing a lot of dungeons and stuff. So for dungeon DPS, this is going to be your way to go. You're going to grab Savage Strike because you want to increase the crit on your Mongoose Bite. That's going to be one of your primary. It really is your primary DPS ability. So increasing the crit by 20% is a no-brainer. And then at this point, you just need to get down into the next area. Now, normally, if you had Feigned Death, you definitely would be pushing Clever Traps, but since we don't have Feigned Death in Season of Discovery Phase 1, it kind of gives you an options here. I would basically go into Deflection. Personally, for me, I would just go Deflection until you get to 5 out of 5, I think, and we're level 22. And at this point, what are you going to do? At this point, I probably would just go ahead and grab Deterrence, grab Survivalist, and I would put 1 point into Sure-Footed. For Season of Discovery, this is the build I would recommend if you're just trying to push damage in dungeons. And again, your rotation's super simple. You know, it's very simple. You're going to send your pet in there. Your pet Growl is not going to be on because obviously you're in a dungeon. The tank's going to have threat, and you're going to basically just using your Flanking Strike. You're going to do your Flanking Strike first whenever it's off cooldown. Then you're going to be doing your Raptor Strike. Of course, you'd use Mongoose Bite whenever you have it available, which isn't going to be very often because you're not tanking. And that's about it. Then you're going to use Carve. If there's more than 2 mobs, go ahead and toss a Carve in there. But if there's not more than 2 mobs, I probably wouldn't even bother. Oh my god, my inventory is a disaster. And I wouldn't bother with that. So that's basically it. Now, if you talk about weapons, the one thing I wanted to touch upon is the weapon choices for a melee hunter. Now, my melee hunter, when I leveled this hunter, it was purely, I was doing melee only. I mean, I have a ranged weapon, but I wasn't really, like, you'll see I don't even have a quiver. I have no quiver, right? So all I was doing was basically using my weapon as a stat stick. So 3 strength, 8 agility. 1 strength is 1 melee attack power, 1 agility is 1 melee attack power. So your primary stats are going to be strength and agility as you level up your melee hunter if you're pushing melee damage. If you want to use ranged abilities, of course you can use ranged abilities. I basically leveled all the way to about level 35-40 without using a single ranged ability whatsoever. And then once I got to 40 to make the gameplay a little bit more flexible, I allowed my hunter to use his stings. And primarily I really just use Serpent Sting. So because Serpent Sting surprisingly actually does quite a lot of damage. So what I would do in a dungeon setting at level 60 with this hardcore level 60, I would send my pet, I would toss in a Serpent Sting, I would move in, I would feign death, I would drop Immolation Trap, and I would immediately go into Wing Clip, Raptor Strike, Mongoose Bite. So it's going to be very, and again, I don't have the right aspect on it. Make sure you have Monkey up. And again, that's, you know, you can see here, you're going to down the mob pretty quick. Now, if you look at my damage again, you can see Serpent Sting did 7%. Now, that's the first fight out of the last 3 fights where I even used Serpent Sting. So so think about in 3 fights how much damage Serpent Sting would do. So it's actually quite a lot. So your rotation in Season Discovery is going to be very similar. Let's see if we can log into Season Discovery really quick, and we can look at at a hunter, a level 25 hunter in Season Discovery. We can kind of see how it pans out. But for weapons, one other thing I want to talk about weapons. So stat-wise, we talked about stats, strength, agility. It's pretty much a no-brainer. For your weapons, a lot of people will tell you to go with a slow 2-hand weapon, which does do really good damage. But the thing with Vanilla WoW is you don't have very good hit rating. So with a slow 2-hand weapon, if you miss a couple times, it's going to feel pretty painful, which can kind of suck. So, you know, leveling up slow 2-hand weapons is pretty decent, but actually don't discount 2 1-hand weapons, especially if the 1-hand weapons have a lot of stats like strength and agility. They can actually still be pretty good. At level 60, I found that actually dual flurry axe is actually doing the most damage for me, simply because even though it's not a slow main hand weapon, I'm hitting so often, I'm proccing all the additional attacks, and because it's a flurry axe and we're proccing all these different additional attacks, it gives me a chance. I hope. I don't know if the additional flurry swing can proc Crusader. That I don't know for sure, but I can tell you Crusader procs enough. I've got Crusader on both weapons. I got dual flurry axes, and I do a lot of damage. Now, if you want to take a look at here, we can see in Sunken Temple, you can see in the specific dungeon with pretty much all 55 plus characters, I'm doing 36.7% of the group damage at 269 DPS per second.
And
I've
tested with the best.
If you want to look at like a simple pull, I'm going to run in, I feign death, I drop my explosive trap, and then I'm using my Raptor Strike. Since this is a level 55 character, I've built enough into Beast M that my pet's hitting actually quite hard. But you can see here, I'm a melee hunter who's pulling 36% of the group damage, and that's classic WoW, right? Classic hardcore WoW, actually, that's a hardcore character. So as a melee hunter, you can actually do a ton of damage, and you can actually be a really viable player in the game. And now in Season of Discovery, in Phase 1, because we don't have Feign Death, that really takes a lot of damage away from us, and it's unfortunate that early data mining that talked about Season of Discovery hunters not needing to be not needing to be out of combat to drop traps. That was something that was discussed before Season Discovery launched. That didn't pan out to be true, which really sucks. If that was, and also there was some pre-early data mining or pre-early tooltip information on Raptor Strike that showed it was going to be a 3-second cooldown and be instant instead of the next available swing and a 6-second cooldown. If those two things would have went in, I think Melee Hunter and Season of Discovery would have been absolutely unstoppable. I mean, they would have been extremely dangerous with just those two changes, because being able to drop traps is, especially when you talent point into it with improved traps, which is going to give you 30% more damage, is actually very powerful. It's extremely powerful. So if we go into seasonal here and we go into Lone Wolf PvP server and we grab my Season of Discovery Hunter, I don't think I've got the Scorpion, of course, because Scorpion is pretty much, even after they nerf the Scorpion, it's still going to be probably your best DPS pet, as long as what you're hitting is susceptible to actually getting poison on it. You can see it looks like the PvP event looks like it's getting ready to start. But you can see here in my talents, I'm actually BM. But if you wanted to do, if you wanted to do a melee hunter, like I said, you would go into, 3 out of 3 humanoid slaying, 3 out of 3 monster, like we have on the talent build. We would just go here, 3, 3, 5, 0, 2, 0, 0, 1, 1, and then 0, 1, 0. And you can see here, I don't have, I'm basically spec'd for kind of a BM build, which is really your most dangerous build, I think, on the hunter right now. But if we did want to go with what we're talking about, what is this chest? If we did want to go with more of a melee build, let's go ahead and see what damage we do. Now, I'm not going to be able to change my talents here, but we can go ahead and check out flanking strike aspect of the lion and carve. And again, I have a pretty crappy weapon. I mean, really, it's good for like ranged, but it's not good for melee. So, and I don't think my let's go ahead and put these on. Now, this weapon here isn't too bad because it gives me 3 agility. What's this weapon speed here? You want to have the sword weapon in your main hand. Think of it like a rogue. Unfortunately, this other sword doesn't have much agility on it, but let's use it anyway. Let's use the dual wield just because it'll feel better. We got to be careful here. There's going to be a lot of horde in this area. I do have a couple weak warriors here showing me that flanking strike, or that carve and flanking strike, I think, are available. Is that flanking strike? Yeah, but that's fine. So, same thing in Melee Hunter. We're going to send my pet. Maybe throw in Serpent Sting. We're going to do Flanking Strike, Raptor Strike. And of course, if you want, we could throw in a Carve here. I missed with it, but that's pretty much it. That's all you can do. So, the rotation's super ridiculously easy. And you can see the damage there. Let me do one more fight this way. And we could start off with a trap, right? We could go ahead and send our pet in. Bring our pet back. We're going to queue up. We're going to do, that. Now we're going to do our Raptor Strike. We're going to do our Flanking Strike. We can throw in a carve, even though carve against a single target is kind of bogus. But we did 86 damage, which is actually pretty good. I'm surprised that it was that high. I normally do around 100 DPS with my when I'm doing ranged. So 86 wasn't bad. You can see a lot of it was auto shot, so that's kind of bogus. Arcane shot. So I actually hit some wrong buttons. Let's do it all over again. I haven't tested this in Season Discovery, so forgive me. Let me do it one more time. Now you could do, like I usually use Monkey, and we'll turn my pet's taunt off, and we're going to try to proc Mongoose Bite as well, which is going to be the right way to do Melee Hunter in single target if you want to do the most. So we're going to do Immolation Trap. I'm going to send my pet in. We're going to bring my pet back. And boom, we're just going to go ahead and try to get threat if we can. I'll make my pet attack too. And you see, I can't even get threat because the amount of damage the pet's doing, right? So again, might see how the damage was shit. Like that damage was terrible. And if we go ahead and split it out, so really Melee Hunter and Season Discovery in a single target situation, you can see my pet Scorpion did 63% of my damage. So right now, like let's go ahead and put on the slower weapon. Where is it? Let's use Gargoyle's Bite because it actually is going to probably hit harder. Let's reset. Send my pet in, drop the Immolation Trap. Bring my pet back. We'll go ahead and throw in our Serpent Sting.
Lovely.
We did proc a Mongoose Bite. Okay, so we did get a few more melee attacks in there. So right there, the pet did 53% damage. But if you look at my damage, we should have a Raptor Strike in here. So if we have one Raptor Strike, which looks like it was parried. We had a Carve that did 37 for 37 damage. We had a flanking strike that did 40. And we had, I'm sorry, we had a mongoose bite, which was 40, right?
Lovely.
Ah, of course the horde's gonna get in here.
You can kiss your ass goodbye.
I don't have any potions? There we go.
You can kiss your ass goodbye.
Ah, well, that was unfortunate. Unfortunately, but the point I'm trying to make is that really, in Season of Discovery, Melee Hunter is a little janky, and it's not that great. It's really not that great. Like, it's not bad. I mean, the Carve is kind of almost a waste. Like, when we looked at the damage, like, Carve doesn't, 37. I mean, that's not a lot of damage. Mongoose Bite was, we had 3 of those for 75. Flanking Strike, 2 for 8. So the max damage on Flank was 40. The max damage on Mongoose was a crit for 41. That was pretty lucky, actually. The max damage on Carve is 37. None of these abilities really hit that hard. And then, of course, when you look at the pet was doing, look at the pet's damage, right? Like, he's max damage on his Scorpion Poison was 68. His melee was regular 40, and his crit was 74. So your pet is doing way more damage than you are in Season of Discovery. And that's if I'm spec'd as a melee hunter. That's if I'm using Flanking Strike, if I'm using Carve, and I'm using Aspect of the Lion. You're going to be much better served to actually go with more. Now, I'm doing 74 DPS overall. You're going to be better served in Season of Discovery to just basically go Aspect of the Lion, Kill Command, and Beast Mastery with a Scorpion pet, and you're going to do more damage. But once we get to the next phase, and we have Feign Death, and we're able to Feign Death while in combat, that is going to make things a lot different. It's going to make things a little bit more spicy. But really, the jury's still out on the Season of Discovery Melee Hunter. Like in Classic WoW, I can play Melee Hunter and actually do quite well. But a lot of that has to do with gearing, having the right gear. So this character that I have here doesn't have the best gear, so I think with really good gear, you're still going to be able to play a Melee Hunter in Season of Discovery, even in Phase 1, and do okay damage. You're never going to out-DPS the ranged Hunter in Phase 1. Like, I don't think you'll ever, unless you had, like, an amazingly good two-hand, like, epic slow weapon, like the one from Black Fathom Depths. If you had that, maybe you could do it, and only in situations where you're doing a lot of AoE damage and being able to get some of your traps off, because you've got to get some of your traps off. Your traps are going to end up being, like, 20% of your overall damage on a Melee Hunter. So keep that in mind. I'll come back and do more videos on Melee Hunter and Season of Discovery as we really get a chance to see the rest of the phases, because right now the way the Melee Hunter is set up is in my opinion, they're pretty bad and they're pretty janky. So if you watch some of these other videos that are up out there where people are talking about, like this video that this guy's doing where he's like massive Melee Hunter guide, first of all, everything he says here is just basic knowledge. There's nothing he's saying here that's really groundbreaking. It's just reading the tooltips and understanding, oh, you've got a few abilities, use them. Basically, that's it. So this guide's kind of bullshit in my opinion. I don't know why people like it so much. And you can see he's going up against a couple of warriors. Well, look at the damage meter. Warriors suck in Season of Discovery, right? Phase 1, warriors, they're not that great. And he's doing AoE damage, and this is Shadowfang Keep, where there's going to be a lot of mobs, okay? So he's going to be doing a lot with Carve. So this is really not a very good video to show you how good a Melee Hunter is going to be in Season of Discovery. In fact, I think he set this up in a way that, he may not have done it on purpose, but he set this up in a way that it makes it look like, that Melee Hunter's good. He also has a fairly decent two-hand weapon. He's got like a really good blue two-hand weapon that actually procs like a really high shadow damage, which if it does proc at a couple of these fights, his damage numbers are going to spike quite a bit. So don't let that fool you. Season of Discovery Hunter, Melee Hunter right now is not that good. But that doesn't mean it won't be good. There just needs to be some changes that have to occur. Anyways, I got to go back to work. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.